after the game in Denver, Gary Kubiak tells the Broncos players that he will retire, and we're hearing that that news is 100% official. What more can you tell us about Gary Kubiak?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was what we've heard it is. You know, he was just worried about his health. He obviously had that health scare back in Houston, collapsed during the game with that mini stroke that they called it. And so I think that's what it was. You know, and we've seen this happen. It's a profession, I think, that's just grueling and wears on you. And he wasn't the only coach headed into this offseason that there were questions about. We were kind of waiting to hear if Bruce Arians would continue in Arizona because there were some concerns about his health too. And we've seen several coaches miss games or miss practices because of health issues this year. So it is something that kind of gets to you. I mean, I think it does make for a much more interesting offseason for Denver now because Kubiak, I mean, he stepped in there and won a Super Bowl, certainly, and I think that system and that scheme, especially on offense, for better or worse, has been built around what he wants to do. So now it's going to be up to John Elway whether he wants to totally change direction here and chase a free agent quarterback or look at Tony Romo and trade, things like that, or if he wants to kind of stay the course and hire someone who is relatively similar to Kubiak. So it does certainly give him more to think about this offseason.
If you were asked by John Elway for some advice, who would you recommend?
You know, I think that it's a team that I think just needs a little bit of a kick offensively. I think that's what we saw. We know the defense is really good. One of the big keys is whether or not they're going to hold on to Wade Phillips now as they move forward. That defense is his. He's done a great job with it. They were great defensively, at least against the pass again this year. So assuming he wants to be around, I think you take someone you really can focus on the offense. And so you look at those names like Josh McDaniels and Kyle Shanahan.
Josh McDaniels back in Denver?
Well, yeah, okay. Josh McDaniels maybe not. But Kyle Shanahan, I guess, maybe bump him to the front of the list there. But those offensive-minded coaches, because the defense, I think, is in pretty good shape moving forward. No, yeah, you're right. I wouldn't.
Well, I'm sorry. I can just see Tim Tebow got just excited when you said that Josh McDaniels might be going back to Denver.
I'm not going to take the Kirk Cousins RG3 reunion off the table, but I'll take the Josh McDaniels Denver reunion off.
I mean, listen, he's a hot commodity, maybe just not in Denver, but
right.
in other places.
We understand why.
Like maybe San Francisco or San Diego. Chip Kelly, Mike McCoy, both out, respectively. What was your reaction, and what other victims will fall on Black Monday?
I think Mike McCoy was expected. I actually thought it might happen last year. You know, that was a team that really fell off, and they've been clobbered by injuries. But that's 2 years in a row now. They've been just not really competitive in a very competitive division. And so they need a change of direction there. Again, you know, do you totally reverse course? They've had offensive-minded head coaches in there for the last few years. Do you go for a defensive guy and risk kind of upsetting Phillip Rivers? So we'll see there. But I think that one was one everyone kind of knew was coming. The Chip Kelly one is just hard to figure. Not that the 49ers necessarily would want to push the reset button, because I think it's clear that they need, at the GM spot, they needed to do something totally different. That roster is a complete mess. But 1 year is just, it's so unfair to give a coach 1 year, and especially with that roster, with the lack of talent on that roster, I'm wondering if there was anything short of a miracle playoff run that would have gotten Chip Kelly a second season, because, you know, if 5 wins with that team would have been very impressive. I don't think it's a huge surprise to anyone that they were as bad as they were. This is a very important step right now for the 49ers, because you make the wrong hire here and you risk extending what's been a pretty miserable couple of years into a bad decade. So they're kind of in shambles. It's been a really tumultuous 3-4 seasons for them. I don't think they gave Chip Kelly a fair shake, but you know, it kind of is what it is. I guess we'll see where they go from here.
We're seeing a number of tweets from various reporters around the country saying that Josh McDaniels is high up on the list for the Niners, and understandably so. Getting back to Chip Kelly, though, how can anybody succeed in that situation, in that franchise right now? Who wants to go there? Do you really want to be a head coach in the NFL that desperately that you will take that job there in San Francisco? Is that what it boils down to?
Well, I think that when you mention a guy like Josh McDaniels, we've seen him kind of sit out these coaching searches before, because I think he's waiting for the perfect spot right now. You know, he had He had the one shot before. It didn't work out. He's been great in New England. I think he probably is at the top of a lot of lists right there with Kyle Shanahan. So if he sees the perfect opportunity or a team that's close to the playoffs, maybe he steps in there and gives it a shot. But, yeah, I mean, you're talking about a total overhaul in San Francisco and probably a multi-year rebuilding project with an owner who's been a little too meddlesome in the past. I mean, it is not for as much history as they had and for as much success as they had even a few years ago, it's not really a spot that you would want to be. So I think it's going to be very hard for them to land one of the big names. And at that point, then you wonder what they do. Do they go to the coaching ranks? Do they go to a retread hire and someone who just didn't work out elsewhere but, has at least some experience, maybe can stabilize things for a bit? I'm not sure. I think it is a very tough sell right now to get someone to go to San Francisco.